slap that bass.
Big time. Man.
Man.
This is Pop Culture Yearbook, Man. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I'm Pistol Pete.
And I'm Giff.
Hey guys, I didn't laugh that time. I made it through
No,
it.
I was so impressed. And I was doing a goofy little dance in the
I
camera
know.
here.
We're getting pretty
Our audience member
pretty
did,
professional, pretty put together here. Things are taking off around here.
They sure are.
Jeff, you wanna talk about a little fun thing that happened yesterday?
Well, first off, I'd like to say thanks again to everybody. And by everybody, I mean, once again, Johnny and my wife, Courtney, for reaching out on the socials on Twitter.
Rappy did too. You're not on Facebook.
Okay, I'm not on Facebook. We love that you guys are reaching out. We like interacting with you. So look us up on our website, Facebook, TikTok, buy me a beer, and also go on to our TikTok account.
Yeah, baby. Because
good Lord, Brad posted something this past week, just yesterday, in fact, that kind of blew up a little bit. We almost doubled in followers. We're over 10,000 followers now.
We already were doing pretty great on that, considering what we would have thought.
Brad, would you like to tell our listener what your post hit yesterday?
So we this is the week where Crazy Stupid Love is out as our new episode, and I just posted the magical scene that Gifford talked about.
And it was magical on TikTok.
Which is what we do. We post all kinds of fun clips on there. It's not us dancing, and you don't even see our faces on there.
Thank God.
And we've done okay.
We
had 5,000 followers, and we had some ones that kind of blew up, or so we thought. But this one is currently, in one day, at 2.9 million views.
Million!
That's million with a B.
267,500 likes. And there's been a couple more since that are taken off. It's insane. And we now have 10,000 followers. And this TikTok thing is not too bad, actually.
This is it, guys. And we're collecting $1 per view, right?
That's correct. Yes, $1 per
That
view.
would be amazing.
But if you want to be part of the fun, I hesitantly joined TikTok and thought I'll just see what's on there. And it's actually not that bad if you get in the right algorithms.
Correct.
I find it to be better than a lot of other social media because they take so much crap out, actually. Like, I've tried to post clips of things that they won't even let me post, and they're really strict about it. And
like your schlong, your schwanz.
Yeah, exactly. Your schwanz. So it's actually pretty well kept, and there's a lot of good stuff on there. And one of those good things is Pop Culture Yearbook and our TikTok.
Yes. Yeah, that was very exciting.
Anyway, it's fun. It's fun for us.
Well, and one other person I'd like to reach out to, I'd like to thank fellow goalie parent Lisa here in Bemidji. She's been listening every week. And
she sounds hilarious.
Oh, she's outstanding. She's hilarious. Well, and you know she's a good woman. She married a man named Brian, and you got to be a good woman to marry a man named Brian. So thank you, Lisa, for listening every week. We greatly appreciate it.
All right, and anyway, it is a new month for us, and it is Christmas time, and it is the end of the year, and it's all those things. But we're going a little different direction here in December.
Mm-hmm.
So this was Pete's idea. So let's have Pete tell you what is going on with our show.
So first of all, we are going to be opening the yearbook, so I have to make sure to get that in there. We are nothing on Pop Culture Yearbook if we're not innovative, and so we're always looking for new ideas and new concepts. And
it's true.
We came up with an idea because it is December, which last time I checked, that closes out the year, right? December closes out the year.
That checks out.
So much like they do on the Oscars and the Grammys and all the other awards shows, they have the In Memoriam segment, which is a little sad, but also one of the coolest parts of the shows. It's like you look back and see who we've sadly lost during the course of the year. So we said, why don't we take a month at the end of the year and look at all of the celebrities, musicians, actors, actresses, whomever that passed away, and let's pick out individual people that we could do a pop culture yearbook episode on. And so that's what the theme of this month is going to be. So we'll
And
have
after we
three.
picked those people, then what did we do?
Then we picked out a movie, music, CD, whatever,
Sure.
or album,
And
whatever.
more.
Well, yeah, and more, just like we do every show. And that's what the theme of this month is. So, Brad, who did we pick for this episode?
So I also, just keeping a little suspense, want to throw out,
Okay.
we love Christmas here, and last year we did a whole Christmas month.
Yeah.
And I want to say we're not going to forsake our favorite holiday. We, at the right before Christmas, we will be putting out a special Christmas themed episode too. So if you're looking forward to it like we are, you'll still get your fix.
Much like
If
October
he's got
this
a
year.
package for you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just
Much
like Halloween,
October,
yes. We
went-
didn't do a whole month like last year, but Gifford made that great game, and we did still celebrate Halloween.
Correct.
Yeah, we got a little something special for you.
All right. So
In
before that, we'll be doing 3 episodes that will sound much like our usual because we're picking a movie or, whatever. But it's based on somebody, like you said, who sadly or maybe tragically or maybe expectedly passed away during the year.
Could be all 3.
I guess.
Expectedly and unexpectedly.
So
That's
my
what you
obvious
want. When
choice.
it's my time, I hope I hit the trifecta, Gifford. Sad, tragic, and what was the other one?
Expectedly.
And
Well,
expected. Yes.
Yeah, I might be
Yes.
the one who expectedly kills you, but we'll have to wait and see how it goes.
I actually
Well,
think
it's expected now. You just announced it on a podcast, so everyone's expecting it.
this first one I'm going to name, I think, kind of does fit that, although the expectedly might have been maybe a few years ago, but not this year. So me and Pete both probably, I'm sure our first choice would have been Taylor Hawkins and to discuss the Foo Fighters, but we already did that. So if you're listening to our show back in May, we put out 2 fantastic Foo Fighters episodes talking about everything to do with them, and obviously in memoriam of Taylor Hawkins too, shortly after he died. I say expectedly because it was known that he had issues in the past, and he did almost die at one point, but it was sure unexpected when we heard about it this year.
Yes.
That's correct.
So he would have been my number 1 choice, but we've already done that. A couple other people that I wrote down, I just want to list off. This one, I don't know how we would have done it, but I was thinking, like, could we watch a game or something? Vin Scully died this year,
Yes.
and what a great sports announcer.
Oh my God.
And like I was thinking, man, should we try to watch like the game where Kirk Gibson hit the home run or something? And but anyway, that's not what I picked. Speaking of
Could
sports,
you imagine if we had him on this show? Like if he, like his
God.
voice on this
Velvety
podcast, that would be
voice.
amazing.
it would class it up a
Yes.
little bit.
Just a little.
One other sports one that I wrote down that's a little more local, but you guys would know, is Marion Barber of the Gophers, who also played for the Cowboys and had a long NFL career. He died very unexpectedly this year, kind of tragically, and he was very important to a little after our formative years, but like college and young adult years of the Gophers, getting them back into the national relevance.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Took them to the next level.
An actor that is more of a character actor who I thought of was Philip Baker Hall. If you don't know him right off the name, you will recognize maybe 2 things. If you've seen the movie Magnolia, he's the game show host, like the dad in
Oh,
there.
yeah.
He's got a great role in that movie. He's also in Boogie Nights. But
Is he the guy in Seinfeld?
his most memorable role is Bookman in
Yes.
Seinfeld, the library
Yes.
cop who gives maybe the greatest speech could be seriously in sitcom history. It is the most memorable scene. He and everybody knows him from that. If you watch Seinfeld, and that's him. So I thought about those things.
Bookman.
Speaking of Seinfeld, both Liz Sheridan and Estelle Harris, the mothers,
Yes.
both died this year. So of course
Yes.
I looked at them. Ray Liotta was a big one, and we may get back to him at some point. James Caan, I was looking at. I'm a huge fan of some of his movies. We talked about Elf last year.
Yeah.
Another character actor, I got 2 left here. Another character actor that I considered for one specific movie was Fred Ward Do you know who that
Oh,
is? Kurt?
yes, absolutely.
So he's been in a lot of things, and if you saw
Yep.
his face, you'd know.
I
But
always
he's
think
in one
about the
of-
right
Refresh
stuff
my
with him.
memory on who he is. The name
Well,
sounds
he's in
familiar.
one of my favorite movies called The Player with Tim Robbins, like this Hollywood satire type movie. And he's got this role in, and that's what I think of him from right away. Without looking it up, I didn't write it down, so I can't think of what else, but he's been in tons of things. And if you look him up, you're going to know him.
I always think of him as Gus Grissom in The Right Stuff.
Okay, there you go. And finally, my last one I considered before my real choice was a Minnesota guy, Louis Anderson, who was a comedian. We liked him here, but he was in one of my other favorite movies, Coming to America. And I thought, well, he's not the star, but still, I'd love to talk about Coming to America. But I didn't pick him either. So that's my list. But who did I pick? So I ended up picking, I looked at these names, and one name jumped out at me, and that is Ivan Reitman. And just a month ago, we talked about Ghostbusters. And I said that wasn't one of my really formative movies growing up, but of course, everybody knew it. And I knew Ivan Reitman as a young child in the 80s as this guy that was in and directed these big movies. And he's known for comedies. And what do I love? Comedies. So here is a list of some of the things that he did that would definitely stand out. He was a producer on Animal House.
Oh, yes.
He was a director of the movie Legal Eagles with Robert Redford, which is another one of those movies, Pete, that I saw in the movie theater. It was a comedy. It wasn't.
Was it a double feature with Witness?
No, but it was around
he never saw The Natural. But that was the one Robert Redford movie. No, I'm joking. See, that's the Harrison Ford reference, like the movie that you should have seen.
And then Ghostbusters he directed, and then he directed Twins and Kindergarten Cop. It's not a Tuma. And then he directed the movie Dave with Kevin Kline when we were in high school, which is a great movie. And then from there on, he was more of a producer of movies that I love. So he was a producer on Road Trip.
Yep.
He was a producer of Old School. And then it came down to what caught my eye right away is these two movies I wrestled back and forth with. At first, I saw that he produced the movie Up in the Air with George Clooney. And I'm like, that is literally one of my top 10 movies ever. And that was going to be my pick. And then I kept looking at the list, and then I saw that same exact year, he was a producer on I Love You, Man. And that is what we are going to talk about tonight. Because that is one of my favorite comedies and one of, I think, the most underrated, not respected enough comedies. It is amazing. So we could have done either one of those.
Yep.
But I picked I Love You, Man, and maybe someday we'll do Up in the Air for a different reason.
Sure. You didn't mention you directed Stripes as well.
Yes, you're right. See, the thing that's one of those that just I've seen it, but it's just not really. I don't know.
Doesn't hit
Stripes
you right.
was the
Didn't
first.
hit me
I
right.
remember
Not
it
the
being.
right time.
I remember it being the first rated R movie that I've ever seen in my entire life, because I remember it was a big thing that they allowed me to watch it. I was, I don't know, 6 years old or whatever, but everybody else was watching it. And so I got to watch it too.
And I'm glad you brought it up, though, because obviously that's a big one and I should have mentioned it.
That's the fact, Jack.
Right.
So he's been involved in so many comedies, and that is my upbringing. And I, like I said, even though I maybe couldn't have picked him out of a lineup, I knew Ivan Reitman as before I was a teenager. Like I knew of his movies, knew of him. So I thought he'd be a good choice. And then when I saw these two movies that he produced in 2009, I'm like, that's perfect. Plus, we did 2009, but they were all Dave's choices. So we kind of glossed over a couple of these great choices that I could have picked, and now we get a chance to do one.
Right. Well, we have that every month where we look back at a year and go, "Oh my God, how do we not pick?"
Well, that's the beauty. We can do this podcast forever.
Yeah.
Right.
We can do whatever we want. It's our show. We can do whatever the hell we want.
Yes.
All right. So quickly, this movie came out in 2009, and it starred Paul Rudd and Jason Segal, amongst many other great funny comic actors.
All-star cast, yes.
But the first time I saw it was in Fargo, and it was after I ran. We used to go up there and run 5Ks and then half marathons, and then eventually I've talked about I did marathons.
Not in the same day.
This was the second time we went up there and I ran the 5K, so it wasn't a big run, but it was a fun trip and a fun weekend. And that night afterwards, we all went and saw this movie. And my wife was with that year, and we were in tears multiple times laughing at this movie. We could not stop laughing, both of us, and it's kind of a rare occurrence when there is a comedy that both of us can rewatch over and over together. And she rewatched it again without hesitation with me 2 nights ago. So it was just, I just love it. And it's got all these great actors, some who were starting to get big at the time, some who already were, some who we got to know more and more later. A lot of the like minor funny guys in it are people that I recognize now from a lot of stuff that maybe at the time I didn't know yet. So I love it. I think it is up there in the upper echelon of comedies, especially in the last 20 years. And I want people to be a part of it. What about you, Gif?
Well, I think this was the first time that I really sat down and watched this movie. I know I've seen it in the past, but I think it was just bits and pieces. Like I'm aware of the slap in the bass and some of the other lines and scenes when I was watching it this time. I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. But this, I didn't remember all of it. So rewatching it now, it was great. So I would say I probably saw it on cable TV, in passing. That's about it for me.
Wow. See, I thought you had seen it. So this is like pretty much a first time for you.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. If for you guys not to know this movie is just, it's ridiculous. So
Criminal
is a better word.
We do now. It's no longer criminal. We're exonerated. This was the first time I saw it, was just yesterday when I watched it in preparation for this podcast. So I don't have any special memories dating back to Fargo or anything like that.
You didn't go that year.
No, I did not.
You're always a latecomer to things.
Well, not in the bedroom.
Yep, that's for sure.
All right.
Anyway.
All right, so I guess that covers it. Did you write down any of the stats, Gif, like you are wont to do sometime?
The only stat I wrote down, came out March 20th, $40 million budget, but it raked in just over $92 million.
That's what I was looking for.
At the box office. I mean,
can always count on you. See, that's a big hit, and you guys didn't see it.
It's almost as many TikTok as many dollars as TikTok views as we're going to have by tomorrow.
Right. Well, and here's the thing, though. And this is actually not a great excuse because I still only had one kid at this time. But once we started having kids, like my movie going experience was pretty much out the window.
Yeah, but you've seen everything on video or on cable. Like you can sit here and recite movies better than me, and it's like but it's like Ghostbusters for me and Stripes for me.
I've got major holes in my pop
major
culture.
Holes.
Yes.
I met your mother.
In my pantheon of things. So that's the other reason why it's great
say major
doing this
holes
podcast.
In your pants.
That's what I was just going to say that.
Pantheon. Get a dictionary, fellas. So that's the other reason why it's great doing this podcast, because you'll bring up something that I haven't seen and I get to go back and watch it. Like Pete had not seen Crazy Stupid Love before.
Yep, there you go.
And that's the other great thing about doing this is
and that's another one of those movies that I feel like is underappreciated. But when you see what happened on TikTok, clearly a lot of people love that movie. So
yes. Well, there's about 5 that don't. We found out.
All right.
And those are the 5 we've got to focus on, because on social media, you got to only focus on the negative people.
Only on the negatives, yes. Correct.
So I did mention this movie when we did our top 5 romantic comedies in the Crazy Stupid Love episode, because I said this is a romantic comedy between 2 platonic heterosexual males, which is not something you see very often, and it nailed it in every way. The whole idea of trying to find a friend, which we'll get into, holy crap. I mean, I know I can relate to that.
Oh, yeah.
That's why all my friends are from high school still, pretty much, because I wouldn't know how to get a new one.
Right.
All my newer friends, most of my newer friends I've broken up with by now that aren't from high school.
Well, and I know a lot of people, since we moved to Bemidji, we've been here since 2006, and a lot of people, but, there's not a ton of great, close friends that you can sit down and talk to about all the things that we see in this movie. between Sydney and Peter, you know. So I would tend to agree with your statement, Brad, where it's like my closest friends tend to be from, you know, high school and college, and as you grow up and get older, you just have a harder time making, you know, those deep connections with another dude.
Correct.
You know,
basically,
right.
I made one in college and one as a teacher, and that's about it. Other than you guys,
right? Yeah, and I work by myself, so yeah,
a lot of other friends, but like like you said, deep connections.
Right.
There's like been 2.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I had pretty deep connections during college.
Yep.
But then everyone just kind of
Yeah, I had a couple others in
just
college, but only one has really been like, you know, the long term,
And it
talk to all the time
before-
still.
correct.
It was before social media and everything, so it's like, and some of them aren't on social media at all. So
Well, and
Just
for
grow
me, this
apart.
podcast brought the 3 of us back together.
That's
Oh my
true.
God,
We
this is
lost
so
you for a while.
emotional.
You moved away,
did.
and
Yep. Well, I'm a bad friend, so I mean that's kind of part of it. I
That
wasn't
is
called-
true.
Yeah. So, well, hey, why don't we get into
Yeah.
this wonderful romantic comedy between 2 dudes?
Two heterosexual dudes.
Yes.
all right. So, one of my favorite actors of all time is Paul Rudd, and so he is Peter, and he is with Zoe. And you find out right away this is not your typical romantic comedy, because in the first scene he takes her to this place where he wants to develop it for real estate, and he proposes to her. So like what you would expect at the end of a romantic comedy, it's right away. This movie,
Mhm.
it is about them, but that's not the main storyline.
You don't have the chase between the man and the woman.
Correct.
You know,
They're
trying
together.
to get together.
Although they
Yep.
do have their ups and downs, so I mean it does still follow that.
Mhm.
But he proposes to her, and she's all in, and there's no awkwardness or any problems there.
There was
and
some
then
awkwardness on the car
The
ride home.
awkwardness
car ride.
comes when they get in the car, and she's telling her friends, and they're on speakerphone, but her friends don't know. And they start saying a lot of very specific and personal details about Peter and Zoe's sex life, and why Zoe doesn't tell them right away they're on speakerphone when she clearly feels it's awkward is a little bit odd. But
Right.
she doesn't, so
Mhm.
that makes it funnier. And
Yeah.
Peter gets a glimpse into what the girls talk about, which is one of the things that he lacks. He doesn't have anybody to talk about with that kind of stuff.
And we do hear one of the friends tell Zoe to lock that tongue down.
That's
girl.
right.
So, and this is, you know, to be fair, this is my experience as well. You know, it seems that women are much more forthcoming amongst themselves about things that happen in the boudoir between couples, whereas at least the friends I have, we don't talk about that stuff.
I don't know. Yeah,
I don't
know. It depends.
Yeah,
It's been
we
up and down.
respect each other's privacy.
Right? Women, on the other hand, they're talking about.
I don't know about that either. I don't think that.
But
this
one of the
question
funny
happens.
parts here too is not only are they so interested in talking to her, but the one girl, Haley, is actually on a date, and she just
Yes.
blows the guy off right to his face
Right.
about how boring of a time she's having. He's like, "Hey, I thought we were having a good time."
And she's just like, oh, sorry. Yeah. She's like, why can't I find any decent guys, you know, and the guy's sitting right across the table from her on a
But
date.
through these phone calls, we get to meet 2 of our other favorite actors and great couple in this movie. So one of her friends is Jamie Lynn Presley, who we've talked about in the Not Another Teen Movie.
Yes.
Mhm.
And she is married
Who's
to
in-
Jon
hold on.
Favreau, who I almost forgot was in this movie.
He is
And
so
his
good
role in this movie is outside of Swingers. It's the best thing he's ever done. Could
Yeah.
be as good as Swingers, actually. He's just not the star.
Well,
For
and
me,
he plays,
He is such a dick, but he is so great.
and that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
difference.
he's a
He
total
plays a
dick.
dick. Like, how many times? I don't really know a lot of movies that he's in where he plays a dick.
That's true.
And he-
He's
and
like
he
in Friends,
does-
you know, he was a good guy in Friends
Yep.
too, and
Yep, Iron Man. His character name is
In-
literally Happy.
he's so good at it.
Yes. In 4 Christmases,
Okay.
he was.
Oh, that's true. He's great with that little role.
He's exactly his character. He's not a dick necessarily. His character is exactly like our friend Haken.
Yep. But that's a very different role.
Watch
for him.
the
That's a
movie
great
and
one to
tell me
bring.
I'm wrong. That's exactly our friend Haken.
You are correct. All right. So anyway, she calls everyone she knows. They're back at home, and she offers the phone and says, "Hey, you didn't call anybody. Do you want to call?" And he's like, "I'll talk to him tomorrow." And she says, well, what about your fencing friends? And he, I love how he says, oh, I'll get Gil tomorrow. And she goes, what about Gil? Gilliam.
Yes.
Just love the way he says Gilliam.
He is so awkward through this
Oh, God.
entire movie. Just anything that comes out of his
That is the
mouth
whole thing, yeah. Throughout.
is he's so strange.
He does
And-
that so well, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and so I've watched Paul Rudd in movies for years, and this is the first time that I watched him and thought he reminded me of Mike Birbiglia. Just the way his mannerisms and kind of his sheepish tone and just awkward all the way around. For some reason, I was like, this is Birbiglia the whole way around. But
Well, I would
I don't
say
know.
he reminds me of one of our friends. So I won't say his name, but Pete, you guys will know who I'm talking about right away. The way that he sometimes acts around girls and other people.
Yes,
The greatest
Yes.
guy ever, but
you're right. But just doesn't know what to say. Just
yeah.
anything.
And I don't know what to say. So that shows you the level
Right.
that sometimes happens there.
Yes.
All right, we meet
I thought
Peter's parents. Oh, sorry, Pete.
no, I was just going to say the overall exaggeration of that awkwardness. It conveys the feeling that we have all had, right? Like
Mhm.
being put in those situations, like Brad, you said, how difficult it is as an adult to make new friends, and when you want that, it's like, yeah, it does come across as awkward when you're pushing too hard for it.
Yeah, how do
Whether
you do it?
it's with friends or if it's with new coworkers or whatever.
And it's
which
not just
I love all my new coworkers, but there's some of that kind of going on right now because I've got a new job and I'm just trying to establish those relationships. It is like that.
But then you're jealous too of people that can. Like so the one of the friends I was talking about that I've formed this good connection with is my friend Adam that I work with. And I'm just like, he can just go up and just talk to anybody at any time about
Got that
anything. And I'm like,
personality, yes.
how do you do that? I cannot do that. And I just don't get it. And so
Right. You
it's
just get
just
tongue
crazy.
tied. Right.
All right. Anyway, we then meet Peter's parents, and these are great. We got Jane Curtin playing his mom.
Jane, you ignorant slut.
And we got
Yes.
one of the greatest actors of our generation here, J.K. Simmons, who
Yes.
just steals the show and everything. He's
I
in
love
his
J.K.
dad.
Simmons. Yes.
Mhm.
And then Andy Samberg, who I totally forgot was in this movie, is his brother.
Mhm.
And he's gay, but like he doesn't have any of the stereotypes. Like he doesn't do that at all. But the relationship between J.K. Simmons, the dad, and Andy Samberg is just comedy gold.
Right.
And like how he had to come around, and then Andy Samberg says, "Dad loves the gays,"
Right.
and I made him an honorary homo last month, and
Honorary
then they give each other knuckles.
Right. Right. Yeah, the
So-
dad's talking about how Robbie never had trouble making friends. Of course, he wanted to suck their dicks, but
Yeah, right. But see, but in Andy Samberg, he just plays right along, like they totally get each other.
yep.
And again, you see though, Peter doesn't fit in with them either. Like even in his family, he's kind of the outcast.
Correct.
So that's what
Well,
part of his
there's-
problem is.
There's an
And I love when he
8-year
asks-
gap between them. Well, the part of it though, it's explained because he's 8 years older than his brother.
Yep.
And I think they're moving around more because of his job, and so
Yeah.
he wasn't able to establish friendships, and so that's what made it a challenge.
They start talking about friends, and I love when he asked his dad, "Who's your best friend?" And this running joke, "Well, I have two best friends,
Right.
Hank Bardukas
Yep.
and Robbie."
Yes.
The
The
Oh,
younger
that's so
brother. And of course,
Robbie
Peter's
being
just-
Andy Samberg, which I maybe didn't say yet.
Yeah. Yep. Well, one of the lines I wrote down here was when J.K. Simmons is explaining, Rudd when he was growing up and how he developed early, and they would go swimming, and he was talking about his bush.
Yeah.
And he's
Mhm.
like, he's just got a Speedo full of Brillo. I just thought that was such a great line. And of course,
after all
all
this-
of this is in front of Zoe, his fiance.
Oh, yes.
And of course, they've only been
Mhm.
dating for 8 months before he pulls the trigger on, so it's not like she's been around for years and years, and she's heard all
Still kind
this
of trying to
before.
get to know the family. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I thought that was great.
And after all this talk about friends and everything, he goes to work now, and we see that he sees this little montage of all these guys hanging out with each other on the way to work, and like he's
Mhm.
looking at him like what he's missing out on. But he doesn't think it's too weird yet. He's just it's starting to get in his head.
Right.
So he starts to tell people when he gets to work about getting engaged, but it's all the women because they're the ones that he relates to. They're the ones that he talks to, and they're the ones that he gets along with, and none of the guys really. And then there's this guy, Tevin.
Yes.
And
Rob Hubble.
Rob Hubble. Okay. He's one of those guys at the time. I don't know that I knew him, but now he pops up all over the place.
He's in it. He's the guy you go, oh yeah, I know him from something. And he's great. I love him in a lot. He was in the League. He had a bit part in the League. And
so Tevin, who Zoe thinks is one of Peter's best friends, because it's one of the only guys he talks about because he works with him all the time, is watching a clip of a grandma on a Sybian machine at work. And he offers to team up with Paul Rudd on the Lou Ferrigno estate, which Paul Rudd's a real estate agent. And he's trying to sell Lou Ferrigno, the Hulk's house. He tries to tell him about the engagement because he's got to tell somebody. And as he's doing it, he's watching the video and he yells out, "She's a squirter!"
Yes, I wrote that down as well. And then he sends it to him.
Yeah,
and of course, Paul Rudd, Peter, he doesn't want anything to do with this. I mean, he's a very
not really uptight, maybe, but
reserved.
very proper.
Yes.
He's reserved.
Down.
Yeah, reserved.
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure. Yep. He's professional in a professional place, whereas Tevin, and the other thing I love about Tevin is he's just got I don't know if it's a fake tan, but totally tanned out. It looks like he's bleaches his hair, like just trying to be so cool.
He's number one.
And we all know the type. We all know we can all name people that are exactly that type.
We know Gifford had bleached out hair once too.
That's right.
I did have bleached out hair. That is correct. It was a favor to a friend. I don't know if you know this person, Brad. I think you might have married her.
That's
but
true.
Yes.
Oh, really? All right. So he tells Zoe that he's going to go out for fencing practice after work, and he'll hang out with the Gil and the boys and have a drink afterwards.
Yep.
And then again, I forgot these guys are in it. So Gil, I'm not sure who he is, but the other two friends that he fences with are Aziz Ansari and Nick Kroll.
Yep.
So again, all these people. He tells them all about getting engaged, and it's a little awkward. And they say they're going to go to the Joshua Tree because it's like a bachelor party for Aziz Ansari. And Paul Rudd didn't even know he was engaged. And so it gets awkward. And they say, we would have invited you, but we didn't think you wanted to go. And he said, no, it's no big deal. And then he tells them I got engaged, and they're all like, but then it ends with Aziz going, good luck with that. And there's like 3 seconds of just silence. Nobody knows what to do.
It's like, yeah, cool, congratulations. And then it's over. It's nothing like when he tells the women,
right,
and they all make a big, huge
because they're not really friends.
Right. The other three at the fencing club,
but
they are definitely friends.
It's not just that, but it's the difference between men and women too. It's like it's like women get excited about it, whereas men are like, okay, cool, congratulations, and that's it.
And then as they're leaving, Paul Rudd shouts out, "Play a U2 record," because I get that because
I get that.
Joshua Tree. Yeah.
All right, so he goes home. He didn't get to go out with the boys, so he's kind of again in this sad, awkward place. But Zoe is at home for her girls' night with her friends, and he overhears them talking, and they're talking about him. And all the friends are trying to convince Zoe about how weird it is that he has no friends. And he's out there mixing up these root beer floats with chocolate straws. I mean, he is just over the top. But when he hears them talking, he just mutters, I got to get some fucking friends.
Now, did you notice that one of the friends at this, and I think she's one of the bridesmaids at the end as well, is actually Ivan's daughter, Catherine Reitman.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know that.
And she was the reason I didn't know it was Ivan's daughter, but I recognized her from How I Met Your Mother. She was the woman on Ted's hook. You remember the episode where everybody's got somebody on their hook? That they're just
I remember the concept, but not.
Yeah, they're stringing the person along. She was on Ted's hook for all those years.
Really?
So yeah, that's what I recognize her from.
So he decides I got to go to my brother Robbie, and I got to get him to help me because he's the guy that can do that. And so Robbie works at a gym, and he's giving him some advice about, you don't go to lunch. And he says, you're not taking these guys to The Devil Wears Prada.
Right.
And Paul Rudd goes, oh, God, I love that movie.
Yes.
Everything goes right over his head.
Yep.
And we learn that Robbie's in there to try to, convert hetero guys because gay guys are too easy for him to get. Like,
See,
too
I
simple.
took it.
Yeah.
I took it as he's not there to convert the hetero guys. He's there to
Confuse
if there's
them?
a guy who's pretending to be hetero but is really gay. He's looking to help them along, and he's
Okay.
happy.
Well, the
to-
guy that he did
That kind of led to
do this
some
was
confusion
married.
later in the-
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yep.
But he's like he's acts like
that
he's
pops up
straight as
again
an
at the
arrow.
end.
Yep. But it's not really a yeah. So that's the way I took it, is he's trying to help out. But we meet one of Robbie's clients that he, because he's a trainer.
Joe Latruglio.
Yes, from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and he
Yes.
is
Another guy who I
credited
had no
as-
idea who he was, but
Oh, not at that time.
no,
Yeah, but he's credited as cracked voice guy.
that's what his name is.
Yes, on IMDb, because every time he talks, his voice
Yeah.
goes high or low, or it's always cracking. And
So that's part of now we have a montage, and so the cars are playing in the background. I think it's Let the Good Times Roll.
hmm
It's a great montage because it's all these different like mandates that Peter is going on. So Robbie set him up with a cracked voice guy
Yep.
from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and they go to a soccer game, and he is just obnoxious and screaming, and his voice is cracking, and everybody hates him.
Even
And
standing out in a soccer crowd, he's obnoxious.
well, it's an
for the
American soccer crowd.
It's American soccer, yeah, but still.
His mom tries to set him up, and of course, she's not very good at it. So she sets him up for dinner, which Robbie said, "You do not go to dinner." And it turns out this Doug guy is
Played by
probably
Thomas-
actually gay.
Thomas
although
Lennon.
Thomas Lennon.
Yep.
He's kind of confusing because he is checking out girls at the restaurant, but
Yep.
then it seems like he is actually gay and tries to kiss him later.
Well, and this is the
And that date's
first
going
time,
great because Peter can really connect with this guy,
right? But
even
this is
though
the-
there's really no hope of that one working out.
This is the first time we hear Peter's leprechaun voice, I believe, because
Oh,
he's
yes.
trying to do the church. They're talking about the church lady, and Peter keeps
Isn't that
trying to do
special?
the. Isn't that special? But it keeps coming out wrong, and
So
he
that's a
sounds like
running theme is the
leprechaun.
leprechaun bad impressions.
Yes. Well, and at the end of that date, Doug leans in to kiss Peter because he thinks it's the date they're on, and he just lets him do it. Like he doesn't like
Yeah,
back
well,
away.
he's so
Yeah,
shocked.
I would have been like, and he's so he's a nice guy. He doesn't want to like offend him or anything. And so like usually
That's
you
Peter.
just back up, but he doesn't. That's just who
Yeah.
he is.
And
Yeah.
to be clear, the kiss you can see is full tongue.
Oh yeah,
It's
Yes.
it's
Yeah,
not
he's
just
getting
a
in there.
peck.
right. Oh my god. 'Cause-
Oh my god.
I
So
mean, how
another
do you not
place
just
that
back
Peter
away?
could meet guys is on the internet, and he meets this guy that he thinks is going to be kind of cool, and it turns out his name is Mel Stein,
Mhm.
and he's like, "Oh yeah, that picture's from a few years ago." Mel is
Right.
like 89 years old,
89.
but
Right.
the picture looked like he was 30.
Right.
He gets invited to play cards with Jon Favreau and his friends, and of course they are nothing like Peter, and he pisses him off. The way he plays cards is so wrong. And Gifford, what does this remind me of?
It just reminds me of
You.
just poker games. Yes, I was
But you-
pissed at him too.
If you play Gifford and you don't play
Oh.
poker the right way,
Oh my god, drives
you're
me
gonna piss him off.
crazy. And the problem is I'm a horrible card player, but I understand card etiquette. And yes, that was bad.
So he wins the deal, but he has no idea how, and that pisses off him. But then they start to drink and they boat race, so everything's kind of back. And he actually wins the drinking game, but he drank so much that as he's yelling in your face at Jon Favreau, he projectile vomits, and it is disgusting.
Oh,
On
it's
him, all
so
over him.
bad. Yeah. I just couldn't believe that Favreau's character didn't punch him. Like he's
out.
covered.
Get out.
Yes. Well, and
But
this
that leads
scene-
to a great line. So he
Yep.
goes home and tells Zoe he went out with those guys, but he says, "I threw up in Barry's face a lot. Projectiled. That's a real thing." I love that line. That's a real thing.
right. Oh God.
Okay, so the dates are not going well. So now we see him at work. He's at Lou Ferrigno's house running an open house because that's what he does. He's got a beautiful view. It's a big mansion. And attending the open house, we see Jason Segal, Sydney. And he's enjoying the food that Peter set out. because nobody usually does that, but that's the way they end up connecting because he loves the food and Peter appreciates that he's eating the food. So they actually start to talk and they form a real connection right off the bat there.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, Jason Segel starts pointing out all these people and he like gives a full play-by-play of this couple and this guy who he knows does not have near enough money to make an offer, who's just trying to impress his girl. And then he shows him how he's trying to hold in a fart.
He does seem to be flinching.
And he goes, "Oh, that's a good move. Get the girl to go so you can stay here." And he goes, "Wait for it." And he lifts his leg up. "That's a fart." Boom.
He's crop dusting your open house.
This is where the point in the movie where it reminded me a lot of the movie we just watched a couple of weeks ago, Crazy Stupid Love, because it's the same kind of relationship is starting to form between it, and the characters are kind of similar.
Yeah,
right,
I mean, between Steve Carell and Ryan Gosling.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
There is a similarity.
There are lots of similarities, I thought. They're kind of going for different things, but it was that same kind of relationship that was forming. And in fact, as the movie went along, I kind of thought the same thing, and we'll get to the details of this later. But it was like, really, it was the other guy, Jason Segel's character, that needed the friendship as much as
yes, we will get to that
as much as anybody. So it kind of unfolds just like it did in Crazy Stupid Love, as
right.
Also.
Well,
he
and
is
also
back to
add,
making those great analogies again. We've missed that.
And to add on to your point, Pete, why is Sidney at the open house to begin with? He's there to pick up a cougar, a divorcee.
Yeah.
So
he's not interested in the house. He just likes to go to open
he's
houses.
on the prowl, much like Jacob's character is always on the prowl.
And we'll see his home situation soon and how that relates to Ryan Gosling kind of too.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the fart guy leaves and yells to him across the hall that it's too small. We're not going to blow an offer. And Segel goes, "Yeah, and it smells like farts."
Right.
So at the end, they exchange cards. We learn his name is Sidney Fife. And this is where you get kind of your first glimpse of Paul Rudd's awkward letting goes. And this one isn't bad at all, but he says, "My pledge." And it's just kind of a little bit weird, but it's not too much.
He can't
But it's
say
a little
anything.
foreshadowing of things to come.
Right. Well,
he's always trying too hard.
Right. And then we get, I don't know how far down this is, but my next note is his phone message.
Well, yeah, that's coming up in a minute.
Okay.
So he goes back to Robbie first to get advice. Now he tells him he met this guy and he's talking to him, and Joe Latruglio is still there, cracked voice guy. And we see him across the way and he's helping a guy. He's a spotter while he's lifting and he's just screaming. I don't want to do it. One of you guys want to do it?
I don't want to do it either.
I'm not going to do it.
Everything you got. Only
I just did the
about 100
impersonation
times
last
and say
week.
it 4 times in a row.
Oh my God.
But now he goes back to work and calls Sidney because Robbie said, "Yeah, you got to call him and but no lunch or no dinner, just, a nice, get a drink or something." But he leaves this terrible message, which is very reminiscent of Swingers. He gets their names backwards right off the bat. He says, "Hey, Sidney," "Hey, Peter, it's Sidney."
Right.
And then when he's all done with this terrible message, just leans back in his chair for a second and goes, "Fuck."
Right. Well, what I love is he gets distracted at one point, I think, by Tevin, and then he's leaving a message, so he's not actually talking to Sidney, and he actually goes on the message. Where was I? What was I saying?
Yeah.
Like, he's expecting an answer back. Like, he is
long.
so bad. It's, oh my God. Yeah. Great awkward humor.
So he, what do I got here? He meets the girls at work. So he goes to where Zoe works with her friends. And Sidney calls him while he's there. And they, of course, know everything because they tell everybody everything. So Zoe's told him everything about this guy. And, they're all kind of pulling for him. And at the end of this phone call, he says, "See you in a jiff." And goes, I've never used that expression before in my life.
Well,
right after he hangs up.
Well, and right before that, the 3 girls are talking about what's going on in their lives. And Jamie Presley's character mentions that her and her husband are going to start trying for kids.
Oh, yeah.
And Zoe's like, "Yay!" And the other friend's like, You.
But then she goes on, too, and says, "I was just picturing you." And she, doesn't let it go.
I'm picturing Barry naked. And, oh, God. Like,
All right. So Sydney asks him some questions when they do go out.
Yeah.
They go and have some beers, and he starts asking him about sex. And Peter is not used to this, and he doesn't know what to say. But eventually, this is what Sydney can do: is he can bring it out of him. He gets him to say, actually, that he wishes his girlfriend would give him more oral sex.
Never heard a man say that.
And then, so they make that connection, and it changes Peter a little. And he gives him this nickname. Pete, what's his nickname?
Pistol Pete.
Pistol Pete. And then he's about to leave, but he's having such a good time that Sydney gets him to stay for fish tacos because they are the best fish tacos in the world. It's a scientific fact.
Mm-hmm.
And they start getting drunk, and I love it. They start quoting things, and Sydney says, "Anybody want a peanut?"
Yes. Right.
Oh, God, it's so funny.
Well,
so they go outside. Oh, go ahead.
We get, well, they go outside, and this is where we get Sydney's first nickname that's given to him.
Oh, this is the greatest one of them all. So he's trying to say goodbye, and he says, "See you, Pistol." And,
Yep.
and what does he say?
We'll see you later, Jobin.
You got it, Jobin.
Jobin.
And he just looks at him like, "What's Jobin?"
Was this the scene where he also called him City Sick?
No,
something?
not yet.
Okay.
But then after that, he says, "You got my number?" And he says, "Yeah, I got you stored in my iPhone."
I thought that was actually funny. And then he's sitting there because he's drunk and he's got to get home, so he's got to call a cab, and he's like standing on the sidewalk.
Oh, the way he's waddling.
He's waddling, and
I'm
he's
so
like,
glad you brought that up. That's so great.
I don't even know how to call a cab. Like, he's just talking to himself at this point, just waddling back and forth.
So he goes back to work, and we see Tevin again, who's talking about marketing and how he's got all these ads up everywhere, including urinal cakes. And it's foreshadowing because Peter doesn't do any marketing, and that's kind of the big difference between them. Tevin will do anything, and he'll sell out in any way, but Peter doesn't do that, but store that away for later. So he calls Sydney to go out again. And at the end of this one, this is my other favorite. Me and Adam, we say this to each other every time. "I will see you there, or I will see you another time." And then he goes, "I don't understand what that means. Are you going to come or not?" And he says, "Yeah, I'll be there." And he goes, "Latris on the Menjay." What did I just say?
I gotta wonder, are those all ad-libbed?
I think there's a lot of ad-libbing, and
probably did.
I'm sure some people would say some of these scenes go on a few lines too long because I think they included a lot of stuff that they're just messing around with.
It's so strange.
It's probably one that has a lot of great like cut scenes. Where they just have them throw whatever they want out there, and then.
But it's nice though because even though it has a lot of that stuff, this, unlike a Judd Apatow movie, who I love, this isn't 2 hours and 15 minutes long. They keep this movie at a normal length for a comedy.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so he meets him to go walking on the boardwalk and boardwalk, and Sydney's dog Anwar Sadat is with, takes a big dump. And we learned that Sydney never picks up his dog's poop because it's compostable, even though it's like on concrete or places where it's, this guy gets angry, he runs through it. And we see Sydney just go like there's a bear. He puts his arms up and just runs at him maniacally.
Just screams. And then,
yeah.
That was hilarious. That was the part that I probably laughed the hardest of the whole movie, was when he did that.
Well, and he used the word like, "You shut your fuckhole" or something.
Yes, that is the word.
So we see that aggressive side of Sydney. Again, it's setting all this up because Peter doesn't have that. And that's going to come back again in a few minutes. But they head back to Sydney's place, and he takes him to his man cave, which is kind of a back shed or garage, not his main house, but another area. And he looks and points out, "What's that?" And he sees that he's got a whole... What does he have, Giff?
He's got some lotion. He's got some condoms right there. And he explains to Peter, to my disappointment, that, this is his jerk-off station. And my disappointment is it's not a jerk-off station. It's a masturbation station.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
sounds
you gotta have the rhyme in there. And so he explains to Peter that why he uses condoms when he masturbates.
It decreases the sensitivity, and there's no sticky cleanup.
Yes. So he asked Peter, when was the last time you masturbated.
So he gets Peter to talk again about things
Yes.
he's not ready to talk about.
Yes.
But it's so funny.
What did Peter confess?
He used a picture of his wife. And Sydney is like, that is sick. He's just offended by it.
His own wife.
Yeah. Well, his fiance,
not his wife,
I guess.
his fiance.
Yes, but
yeah.
I mean, he's so appalled that is what Peter is masturbating to.
He's so distanced from what a relationship is. Right. So.
Well, and to be fair, I can kind of understand, like, she's your fiance, like, you really don't have to masturbate to that. Like, just go get that. I mean, I don't know.
Well, she was out of town that weekend, Gif.
Oh, that's true. Yes, you're right. That's right. They were gone for the weekend. That's when he did it. Yes.
But
you're correct.
His point, yeah, if you're going to fantasize,
right.
Fantasize about something that you can't have, which is funny because it ties almost exactly into a How I Met Your Mother episode that I just saw last night too. So
I love that you're still watching that. I love that you got into
We're working our way. It's like one or two episodes every night.
That's awesome.
So he's getting Peter to open up about more things, but then they connect even more because Peter sees he's got a whole like drum set and instruments, and he's got a Rush poster, and he says we should jam. And another great line by Peter, "Totes my goats."
Yes. Yes.
And then this is where at the end, as he's leaving his house, he goes, "Later, city slicker."
Yeah, that's what it was.
And he apologizes. "I'm sorry, I called you city slicker." But Sidney thinks it's cool, and he's like, "We'll keep working on it. We'll get there. We'll get a nickname that works."
Right. Oh, so good.
So now he's talking at work to Lou Ferrigno, and things aren't going well on the house selling front. So Lou Ferrigno's starting to get on Peter, which is causing a lot of stress. But Sidney shows up at work, and since he's stressed, he wants to get out of there. So they go back, and we're back to Sidney's again. This is like the next day or whatever. But they go back and they start to jam, and they're going to play some Rush. What, Gifford?
Well, there's a scene in the office where he's talking to Lou Ferrigno, and Sidney's trying to, lighten the mood a little bit. So he's kind of doing his Hulk.
Oh yeah, because he's on the phone with Lou Ferrigno.
He's on the phone with Lou Ferrigno. So Sidney's like pantomiming and like saying, "Oh, don't get me mad." And my problem with that scene is it's not that you don't want to get Lou Ferrigno mad. You don't want to get Bruce Banner mad. Because then he turns into the Hulk.
You know what? That stupid thought actually crossed my mind too.
I appreciate
that is a stupid thought because there is no real Bruce Banner. That's who Lou Ferrigno was playing, so it works.
Right. No, he's not playing Bruce Banner. He's playing the Hulk.
You would do the same thing if it was in your real life and you were with Lou Ferrigno.
At that point, the Hulk's already mad.
Bill Bixby played Bruce Banner.
Yes.
And it was Lou Ferrigno that played the Hulk.
Right.
Anyway,
you don't want to get Bruce.
We digress just a little bit.
You don't want to get Bruce Bixby angry. Because once he turns into Lou Ferrigno, he's already mad and you're screwed. So, just all right.
Anyway, they're going to jam, and this leads to our next musical montage. They're playing Tom Sawyer by Rush.
Mm-hmm.
And we see a bunch of things. This is a whole montage of these two now becoming best friends.
Yes.
So Peter has a scooter, and they ride it together with these ridiculous little helmets, and it's just a great visual. And Peter's on the back of the scooter hanging on to him.
Did that take you back?
Shades of Dumb and Dumber.
Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of buddy comedies coming up.
Yep.
They go walking on the boardwalk again. This time he doesn't confront the guy who's mad about the dog crap because he knows the line because this guy is scary and it's not going to work. So they run away instead.
Yes.
Sidney shows up at one of his open houses and puts on a show like he's going to make an offer and says, "This house is exquisite," and to drum up interest. Mm-hmm. So they're working together. Back and forth between every one of these, we see them jamming and going crazy. He goes hiking with Sidney's friends, so he's getting pulled into his circle. But then at the end of that, all the friends go home. They're supposed to hang out and have a big party sub, but every one of them has their own life, and this starts to set up Sidney's story too. They all have something to go home to. One guy's got to go watch Mr. Memoriam's Wonder Emporium. And they've all got kids or work. So the only guy left really is Peter. And we see that Sidney's a little sad, even though he does have this group of friends.
Right. He's the only single one of his group. And, Peter's supposed to go home because isn't this Sunday night, and he always spends Sunday night.
They watch HBO.
Yes, it's not TV. It's HBO.
That's right. Have you ever watched Sunday Night HBO? It's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
So he goes and tells Zoe what they do. She's like, "What do you do with this guy all the time?" And he says, "Well, we jam." And this sets up maybe the most memorable scene in the movie.
Yep.
And he says, "Yeah, I slap the bass around a little." Slapping a bass. And he starts to try to do a Jamaican accent. And again, he sounds like a leprechaun. And she tries to teach him. Big time.
Yep. And so she doesn't know what Rush is.
Are you ready to get Rushified?
Right. So he goes to iTunes on his.
Are you ready to get your mind blown?
On his laptop.
No, it's his phone, isn't it?
No, it's his laptop.
It was a laptop that was
okay. Well, either way, the sound that comes out is
doesn't sound very
low
good
and not good.
Like
so it's funny.
And he's like, it sounds better on big speakers. And she's like, yeah, I could see that.
But then he starts to play the air bass, and she says, "Is that how you play your bass?" "Well, no. When I play bass, I play down here, but air bass is up here."
Right. And she is not impressed because he just keeps going and going and going. She's like,
this is probably, even though it's a very memorable scene, this is one that I'm sure some might say goes on a little too long. How many times he says slap at a bass.
Slap at a bass.
But by the end, it's like so funny. I mean, you just can't help but laugh.
Right.
All right. Well, so now they go to an engagement party, and he gets to bring his new friend with. So Robbie shows up, and who's he with?
He's with the married straight guy that
he met at the gym.
Flirting with him at the gym. Yes.
So Robbie's there with his new guy, and Sydney comes to meet everybody, including Haley, who they kind of want to try to set him up with. And she actually, I should take back what I said earlier. Well, I'm going to take it back. But the way Haley talks to this guy is what I was referring to with our friend who has a very hard time flirting.
Oh, I could see that too.
She is bad, and she is very awkward.
Oh, but very forward.
Sex on the beach. You never know. You got to be careful just in case.
It's
just stupid.
Oh my God. You could tell she's just thirsty as hell. Like she's ready to jump his bones.
But Barry and Denise come, and they're as usual fighting again. and they end up the girls go to talk, and Barry and Peter get left alone together, and they're so awkward. So he starts to try to ask, like, do you play an instrument? Because he doesn't know what to talk about. And he says, don't you have a piano in your house? Because Barry said he doesn't play any instruments. And he goes, yeah, decorator, put it there. And he's chewing on a toothpick, and he just walks away. He couldn't be less interested.
Right.
He hates him.
He thought it was a pop-in. He's like bitching at his wife. I thought this was a pop-in.
Yeah, it's an engagement party.
It's an engagement party. And she's like one of the maids of honor. Like she's, a major player in this.
So Peter's mom gives a speech, and everybody's having a good time. And then Sydney decides to give a speech. And I love, he goes around and he thanks everybody and names everyone he just met. And he goes, this guy with the smoking hot wife,
right,
to Barry.
Robbie's lover.
But then he gives this speech, and he means well, but it's not good.
Very awkward.
It's a very
what is it?
Poorly veiled attempt.
Not veiled much at all.
At asking Zoe to, because at one point he says, Zoe, give it back.
A pleasure giver. Because Peter's a pleasure giver.
Pleasure giver, and he never asked for anything back. But Zoe, give it back.
And he tries to save it, because after it gets really awkward, he goes, and then you will have a happy and long, like he tries to end the toast with, being happy, but he's lost it already before that. And
basically referring back to when she does not return the oral pleasure that Peter is very adept at giving.
So it was going well until that. And then they're in the car on the way home, and she is obviously mad because it didn't escape her what he was saying. Well,
and again, this is, it's so weird that Zoe's upset that Peter would talk about their sex life when Zoe freely talks about it.
But it's like a nice scene because he brings that up. And she actually says, you're right. And she doesn't stay mad. And it allowed those two to connect. And he said, without Sydney saying that, we wouldn't be talking about this now.
Right.
So it did actually kind of work out.
And the best part about the whole scene is we come to find out that Zoe does indeed enjoy giving it back.
Yeah, but not anymore. And so he's like, oh, that's really great.
Yes.
But they also decide that they're going to go on a double date now with Haley
Oh my
and Barry after they've reconciled right there.
Yes. And
And
that date does not go quite
what's nice too, though, is Sydney, who you don't really realize it at the time, he does feel terrible. He like all out apologizes to Peter about the speech. And he realizes that he was way off.
right.
And because of that, he doesn't want to go with Haley. He can't stand Haley, but he agrees to go on this date because Peter says, "You owe me because you told my wife to give me blowies."
Right, but now she's going to. So really, he did him a pretty solid favor.
So they all go golfing.
Oh God, this goes great.
Barry gets hit by a ball. and
This
he
is
just
my
goes,
nightmare.
This is my nightmare. We meet another guy who, at the time, I didn't know really much.
Oh,
Well, actually,
yeah.
we did. Matt Walsh from the end of Elf, and then he's on Veep.
Yep.
He is behind them, and they are a terrible group of golfers, and they don't understand. The girls don't understand at all. Like, you got to keep playing and keep moving.
Yep.
And he yells, rate of play, like 5 times at him. And Haley just walks off and leaves because she's all pissed, and it just went terrible.
Yes.
And at the time she's walking off, Sydney's going, "Oh no, please come back."
Oh.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yes.
So at home, they're about to watch HBO. And Sydney calls Peter and says he just got an alert. Rush is playing a small club and it's tonight. And he's like, "Well, I can't go because we watch HBO." And he's like, "This is Rush, the Holy Trinity." And I haven't seen him since the Signals tour.
Yep.
So he decides to try to make a, oh my God, I'm totally blank.
To bring Zoe, he wants to bring Zoe along. He's like, "Well, I'll invite her."
What is the word when you both give up something?
A compromise.
Thank you.
He's an English teacher, ladies and gentlemen, teaching America's youth.
You know how you blank. So anyway,
We're
it's
playing
a
match
compromise.
game here.
They're not going to watch HBO, but she'll come with. And when they go to this concert, it starts off well. They're all having a good time, but then you know how you're in the middle and you want to please both, and he can't keep his face from looking at Sydney because they're the two that love Rush.
Yep.
And they're licking each other's air guitars, and eventually he gets up on his shoulders and he pulls his shirt over his head, and Zoe is just looking at them like, "What the hell is going on?"
No, she literally lips.
Oh, she did.
The fuck.
Right. So they get home, and she confronts him about, she feels like she's losing him. And in one case, it's not fair because he, this is great for Peter, and she even encouraged it. But in the other case, it's like, well,
he is going a bit far.
He is going a little far, and it's weird for her too.
Difficult
so they have
to find the right balance. That's what it's about. The right balance. That works for both
almost
of
like
them.
a compromise.
Yes.
Compromise.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, Sydney and Peter are together again, and Sydney asks, "Why are you marrying Zoe?" It should be a pretty easy question. And Peter, who obviously loves her, and obviously it's not a big deal, but he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what the answer is. And so it just kind of makes him think for a second, and they're looking at tuxes. And what happens is Peter gets encouraged by Sydney to start trying on all these other tuxes, and he's doing all these poses. And Sydney's taking pictures of him, and we don't really know why, but again, this is all foreshadowing. But then he does this James Bond impression, and again, it's a terrible impression at start.
Sounds like a leprechaun at one point.
But I love this. The name is Bond. I'll have a margarita. Right. Well, hey there, Miss Money Pussy. Want to ride on my jetpack? Right. Yes, that might be my favorite line in the whole movie.
I mean, he messes everything up. A margarita
pussy
instead of a martini. Yeah, so he combines money, penny, and octopussy, and it's just
and a ride on my jetpack.
Everything is so wrong. And then the other part I love about this, as a big Bond fan that I am, when he can't figure out how to pose properly, Sydney goes, think of Timothy Dalton. Possibly, he's definitely on the lower end of the best Bonds, but
he gets it right away.
Peter's like, "Oh, okay."
There he nails it.
That's the one that clicks with Peter, is Timothy Dalton's Bond.
So while they're here doing these tuxes, Sydney asks him for $8,000 for an investment opportunity, but he can't tell him what it is. And Peter first says no. So they leave and they see Doug while they're out walking, and Doug is upset and calls him a whore. And eventually Peter admits to Sydney that he has no friends and that the way this all started was he's looking for a friend. And Sydney is very understanding, like, well, that's cool. But that leads to then Peter saying, "Yep, I'll lend you the money because like you're a great guy and this is great and I trust you." Then he asked him to be his
I
best
actually
man.
thought, by the way, when he asked for the money at first, he just said like how much you need, and he goes 8. And I thought that it was going to be something like way big. I thought he understood it to be 8,000, and I thought that it was going to come around that it was like 800,000 or something like that.
I think it would have been great if he would have
the
said
way it was setting up like that.
I thought it would have been great if he said about $52,000.
Yeah.
Anyway, he asked him to be his best man. And again, it's a romantic comedy. Ain't Love a Kick in the Head plays in the background, and they're all happy. And this is like the moment, where they get together. So they're planning the wedding. Zoe's still weird about him. Things are going a little weird with those two. They see Lou Ferrigno and Tevin on the boardwalk walking. And Sydney decides to confront Lou Ferrigno. And again, he goes way too far. Yes. Ferrigno puts him in a sleeper hold. And as he's doing this, Zoe's on the phone with Peter and hears the whole thing. So again, she's like, who is this nutcase? And it's just not helping.
I just love the line, Sydney's fighting Lou Ferrigno. Like, who the hell picks a fight with Lou Hulk? Ferrigno? Good Lord.
Now Peter makes the really stupid move of talking to Zoe and saying that he got asked why he's getting married. And he says he didn't know why. And he's just so stupid, because why would you bring that up? And she goes, "You're kidding, right?" And he goes, "Yes." But he's not. So she leaves. She leaves the house. She's going to go stay with Denise and Barry. She's so awkward already anyway, and now he doesn't know why he's marrying her, so she needs a break. Mm-hmm. Peter's sad. He drives to work, and he sees all of a sudden there are these billboards everywhere on the way to work, and it's all these poses that he did. There's ones of him as Bond. There's ones of him without his shirt on. There's ones of him as a cowboy. And there's all these gimmicky advertising billboards all over the place. On a
bus. He'll pimp your condo where he's like hugging a woman's thonged ass. The one I loved was the LA's biggest realtor, and all he has on, he's photoshopped into a banana hammock. Yeah. That's it's filled out very well. Yeah. Let's just put it that way.
And so we realized the money was for Sydney was trying to drum up business for him. He bought these billboards with that money, but Peter did not like it. He does not. That's not the way he works. Mm-hmm. So he gets all mad at Sydney now, and he yells at him. He blames him for everything that's happened. And he said, "You know what? The best night I've had in the last however long, me and Zoe had wine, a summer salad, and we watched Chocolat."
Yes. You mean chocolate?
And Sydney just can't believe it. And he asks Sydney for a break, but before he leaves, he says, "But I think you have my season 2 Lost DVDs." Zoe really is curious about what's going on inside that hatch.
Yes, she didn't see what was going on inside that hatch. So good.
So he goes to see Zoe to make up, and Barry walks by the door and says, "Nice face." And he tries to explain. He's talking about the billboards. He's actually giving him a compliment.
Right.
But then Peter tries to explain what's going on, and Barry just walks away and says, "I don't give a shit."
I don't give a shit.
They make up. Barry and Denise are fighting again, and he says, "You're going to dress up for me like a cheerleader tonight."
Yes. Every time.
Because she's ruining his card game.
Denise asks for a favor from Barry. She's required to do something in the bedroom. I just think that's hilarious.
They know how to compromise.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
They have a weird relationship, but they get each other. So now it's your romantic comedy. We're into Act 3. So Peter and Zoe are all good again. Everybody's happy. The wedding's back on. But now Sydney's the sad one, and he's walking around, doesn't know what to do with himself. Zoe actually encourages Peter to call him.
Yep.
Peter ends up meeting Mel Stein again instead and asks him to go to his wedding. And he says, "Are you busy that weekend?" And he goes, "I'm 89 years old. What the fuck kind of plans would I have?"
Right. Yes.
So Sydney is watching Chocolat by himself, and he falls for it. And you can see how sad he is to lose Peter. Peter goes back to work, realizes the billboards were a hit because he's got like 1 million messages, and these are everybody's telling him how much they love him. One is from Doug, who says, "I love him. Right. You're great." And one's from Lou. Lou Ferrigno is the big one. Tevin wants to split it still, and Peter slaps him because he didn't know what else to do, but he wanted to cause physical harm.
Yeah,
but it's the
Never
first time he
punched
stood up to
anybody before.
anybody, and he feels great, and he walks away and smiles at the women, and they all like cheer him on.
right.
So now we're to the wedding. Peter's wedding party is his dad, his brother, Lou Ferrigno, Doug, Squeak Voice Guy, and Mel Stein.
And Mel Stein. And I love how they all walk out in the slow
motion.
out. Oh my God. Yes.
Sydney gets a call on his scooter saying to come to the wedding. And he says, okay, I'll see if I can make it. But we pan out and he's in his tux. He's on the way to the wedding already. He was going to go no matter what. Peter gives the ring to Robbie to hold because he doesn't have a best man anymore. And it was really cute because Robbie hugs him because, you know, they get along, but they didn't have that brother relationship. But they come together. And J.K. Simmons says, you guys are both my best friends.
And
Hank Bardukas.
And then he
in the
waves
front
to
row
him
by his wife.
He's sitting in the audience.
All right. Then the wedding starts, and then Sydney shows up, and he doesn't know what to do, and he starts to walk down the aisle like one step at a time.
Like he's in the wedding party. Like he's got a bridesmaid with him, and he takes one step.
And technically on the phone, you don't know who called him. You kind of think maybe it was Peter, but it was actually Zoe who called him. And he says, for the record, I saw Chocolat. Just delightful. And they make up, and this is where the name of the movie comes in. And he finally says, I love you, man. And he goes, I love you too, dude. I love you, bud. I love you, bro, Montana. And they go back and forth like 10 times.
And then they're probably like, okay, we need to stop this. Or no, the pastor says that. Yeah. All right.
And so it ends with the wedding of Peter and Zoe, but really it's, you know, everybody's now back together, and Peter and Sydney are best friends again, and he got to be the best man at the last minute, and it's got the happy ending, and it's just hilarious.
Well, and then we got the excellent credit scenes as well, where they're playing.
Oh, they're playing Rush, right?
Yeah, they're playing Rush. Yep.
You know, I think I shut it off before that this time.
No.
Yeah, I think I forgot.
Oh, it was great at the wedding.
I'll go watch it.
So there's a scene at the wedding where Peter is sitting at the reception, and Zoe's on one side, and Sid's on the other, and they're going back and forth about the whole blowjob situation again, and Peter's feeling very awkward, and they play Sydney and Peter are up on stage at the wedding playing Rush, and everything's just awesome again.
Yeah, I got to go back and watch it. I totally forgot. Now that you say it, like, yeah, I know, that's great. And because it did kind of end quickly right there.
Oh, super quick.
And those add a little more that I completely missed.
Well, and then you see Denise and Barry sitting at the reception arguing, and Denise throws up on Barry, projectile vomits on him, and then she says, well, I can't help it because I'm pregnant. And that's where Barry finds out that he's going to have a kid. But the last line, I think, of the movie is he's like, make it a boy.
Yep, that's right.
I mean, he's such a dick right to the end.
All right, so you guys, first timers, how do you rank it? Obviously, it's one of my top ever.
I loved it. I thought it was a great movie. I enjoyed it. I do have. It's going to sound like a criticism, but I do have one kind of negative thing to say. But bear with me on it. Okay. Jason Segal. I love him as an actor. I love as a character, and he's funny and everything. His acting ability isn't the greatest. Right. I mean, there are times in it's like where it just seemed like he was struggling to me as an actor.
I didn't get that.
I don't know. It seemed like and actually a couple of times during the movie, I thought that it seemed like the role itself was tailor-made for Matthew McConaughey. Like he would have been like, that's the type of guy you picture in that role.
Well, I think he's too cool though. The thing is, Sydney doesn't have friends. It's got to be kind of the sad sack in the end.
No, you're right. But that's, I just kept envisioning Matthew McConaughey in that role,
or Ryan Gosling.
But I feel like that there are times where he was like struggling, but there's times where he was really super funny too.
Interesting.
I don't know, but maybe I'll watch it again and think that he deserves an Oscar. But
you should watch it again. Giff, you got anything else to say before we move on?
I thought it was a great pick. Very good. I love both of the main actors in it. So that right off the bat is great. And I do like, like you said, you included it in your best rom-com movies. I like the twist of having a bromance instead of, the usual rom-com.
It's a brom-com.
Right. And the other thing I liked about it is all the cameos of all these actors that now you know them way better, and you're like, oh yeah, he's in this.
Like
this
almost
this.
everybody with like any kind of significant speaking part is like somebody you know.
Yep, for sure.
Because they're all part of that whole there's like this whole comedy crew scene, and they all
Well, you got Samberg and his co-star Charles from Brooklyn Nine-Nine are both in it. So yeah, I thought it was a great movie. I love that you picked it and that I got to watch it again.
All right, so to finish this up, I was trying to think of a good top 5, and so because it's a bromance, I thought, well, let's do buddy comedies, because that's like a genre.
Yep.
And I didn't give you any definition of buddy comedy, but my definition would be like it revolves basically around 2 guys, maybe a group, but they're buddies and it's comedy. So
for sure.
Yeah. But
I'll go last because I picked this one. So one of you guys can lead it off with how you defined it and your choices.
All right.
I go first.
Go ahead, Pete.
I had a couple of honorable mentions. I had Wayne's World. I had Point Break. Stir Crazy.
That a comedy?
Did it have to be
buddy movies?
Did it have to be a comedy?
I said buddy comedies. It was the title of the topic.
Sorry.
That's fair.
Never mind. All right.
Stir Crazy, though, is a great one.
And corrected. All of the other ones pretty much fit that, although one is an unintended comedy, and you may see where I'm going with that one, Brad.
Yes.
Stir Crazy and Kingpin.
Yes.
Was another one, and now we do get to my top 5. I had Swingers as my number 5. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is my number 4. Dumb and Dumber 3. Number 2 is The Room.
Which unintentional. It's a black comedy.
It's a black comedy. You're right.
It's twists.
But definitely a buddy movie because he reiterates several times how he's his best friend.
Yep.
And number 1 is Clerks.
Okay.
Excellent.
So we had a very similar top 5, but you left off a giant one that I thought would be your number 1.
Sure.
Did I? I'm sure I did. It was.
Well, you'll know as soon as I say it. Gifford will probably say it too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I have 4 that I omitted because I took this as a definition of buddy comedy in which like the characters are good buddies. So I took out Planes, Trains, and Automobiles because at the end they're finally friends, but they butt heads. So like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Grumpy Old Men, and Toy Story, I took out of the mix.
Oh, Toy Story.
So I'm going to go through, if you don't mind, all of my honorable mentions. So we've got Step Brothers, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Superbad, Wedding Crashers, The Other Guys, The Hangover, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, Monsters, Inc., excellent buddy show, Blues Brothers, Romy and Michelle's High School Reunion, Ted, Bridesmaids, Charlie's Angels, Clueless, Coming to America, Dukes of Hazzard, Friday, Ghostbusters, Half Baked, Hall Pass, House Party, Horrible Bosses, Mallrats, Ocean's 11s, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Spaceballs.
Yes, that's my Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor favorite.
Yep. Spaceballs, Spies Like Us, Stripes, Stuck on You, Beer Fest, Napoleon Dynamite, Tag, and Weekend at Bernie's. So my top 5, my number 5 is Clerks. My number 4 is Tommy Boy. My number 3, Super Troopers. Number 2, American Pie. And my number 1 is the funniest movie ever made, minute by minute, and that is Dumb and Dumber.
You guys, I cannot believe neither of you have my number 1.
Oh,
You've named every movie I have.
Brad, I think that I know where you're going.
Don't say it.
But I thought of it. If you are, I thought of it, but I have an explanation.
Okay, I'm waiting to hear
I'm
it
sure
too.
you
I
do.
may have the same explanation.
So you've named everything. I'll just tell you my list. My honorable mentions were Tommy Boy, Jay and Silent Bob. I love that you said Romy and Michelle. I love that movie.
That's so good.
Clerks, Kingpin, Coming to America, and Wayne's World. My top 5, I had Dumb and Dumber, I Love You Man, obviously,
Yep.
Swingers, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and number 1, guys, Three Amigos.
Three Amigos.
Oh my
right.
God!
So here was I thought of it.
The
Brad.
title
Oh
is
my
Three
God!
Friends.
How the hell? Did I
I
not have
focused
Three
because
Amigos?
we take this any way we want, and I definitely thought about it, and I almost wrote it down. But the reason I didn't was because I was focusing on movies where it was primarily about two
Two
friends,
guys.
and because that was 3, because it was
But you
be
wrote
like,
Swingers.
well,
That's a whole
Swingers
group.
it is a group, but it was more on the two guys.
I don't know. I
on
would
Jon
say
Favreau.
you're right, but Ron Livingston is like John. I mean, he's like
He is.
I can't.
But-
No, by my definition, Three Amigos is a huge swing and a miss for me. Good Lord!
No, I didn't swing and miss.
The title is
oh.
Three Friends, Three Buddies.
Oh my God, that's my
So-
bad. I'll take next week off. Sorry, that's my penance.
I'm just glad that I got to name one movie that nobody
Oh,
else had said.
God, Three
There you go.
Amigos. Jeez,
All right.
moron.
So that'll do it.
Hey, you know
Thank
who
you
else
for a lot of
likes-
good comedies, Ivan Reitman. Let's
That's
mention
true.
your name again, since that was the impetus of this whole episode.
Yep.
And I love you, man.
I love you too. Hey, who else likes?
Oh, well done.
Who
I love
else
you,
likes
dudes.
buddy comedies?
Preacher Row, they're buddies themselves.
That was my mother's name.
Yeah.
You're mixing episodes now.
All right. All right.
Oh no. Oh shit. Sorry.
What are you talking about?
I was thinking that Ryan Gosling said that because I'm getting
No.
these two back mixed up now.
No, that was Sydney's
Oh, yeah,
you're
pickup
right.
line with a lot
I
of
got
women.
it. I got it.
Yep.
Now I blew
Similar.
it.
God, I got to cut that out
Much
now.
like Zoe now.
All right. We will hope you like this one and listen, and we will see you next week.
We'll see you. Thanks for listening.
There we go. I love you, dude.
Standing on my own tilted. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start to me on my path. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do.